Welcome, everybody. My name is Michael Northrup. I'm with GRITT Business Coaching, and I just want to welcome everybody. Thanks for joining us for today's webinar, Your ESOP, Your Future, Making Smart Moves Towards Retirement. And I do want to thank everybody. I think you saw the early question, hey, what would you do if you had a windfall of $250,000? We already got some really awesome answers. We got some folks who pay off their mortgage. We got some folks that want to invest it. We got some folks that want to finish building their lake house, maybe take an epic vacation. All those are awesome answers. So we're going to really dive into it today. And so thank you for that participation. So today you're going to hear from myself. My name is Michael Northrup. I'm with GRITT Business Coaching. Peter Newman from Peak Wealth Planning and Tiffany Bennett from Plastic Products. And so what I'm doing today, I'm really just going to sort of be the host here, and I've got two experts on the line that are really going to dive into some of the diversification topics that may happen in the ESOP. First of all, though, a little bit of background about me. Those of you that don't know me, I'm the Director of Sales and Operations at GRITT Business Coaching. I have a background in a multitude of industries, everything from the wine business, hotels, construction, industrial automation, kind of a jack of all trades. Certainly a master of none, but I'm getting there, right? Been with GRITT Business Coaching 5 years, almost 6. Spent almost 10 years in the coaching side, and I've had a really great opportunity in my career to experience ESOPs at various levels. Right, I've had time in a mature ESOP that's been around for 30 years, and there's all kinds of challenges and great things that happen with those. And I've been with a younger ESOP, right? That's 5, 6, 7 years into their journey. And so a whole other set of challenges and things of that nature. Currently sit on the ESOP committee at PFS Brands. And for those of you who maybe don't understand the connection with GRITT Business Coaching and PFS Brands, GRITT Business Coaching is a small boutique coaching company that we specialize in helping. Really, our goal is to help others become more successful at work and in life, but we do help companies that have various challenges. Maybe they're struggling around growth. Maybe they're struggling around getting the right people in the right seats or leadership, those kinds of things. And we come in and we work with them to get their business to the next level. We were founded in 2018. And Peter, you can go to the next slide if you don't mind. We were founded in 2018, really out of this book called Keeping Score with Grit that was written by the CEO, Sean Bertram of GRITT Business Coaching. And we really try to focus on 3 key areas when we coach companies. And that's people literacy, business literacy, and financial literacy. And here's what's interesting. Right. So while we do all those fun things, we're actually part of something bigger. And that is, you've heard me mention PFS Brands, right? So what's PFS Brands? Okay. They are basically an ESOP holding company, and we have several different divisions. You can see our different brands up there. GRITT Business Coaching is just a small part of that. We've actually got food programs. That's how we got started with Champs Chicken, Cooper's Express. We've got pizza programs, and you'll find these in grocery stores, convenience stores, truck stops all across the country. I think we're about 2,000 locations now. Not only that, over time we've diversified. We actually have an equipment division. We have a blending facility. We have a freight company. Recently, we've purchased 9 grocery stores, Mosier's. They're in the greater Columbia, Missouri area. And then we also have a manufacturing facility. No joke, we're manufacturing dog bones for Blue Diamond Pet Food. So really cool that we've been able to diversify over these years. They were founded in 1998. We're located out of Holt Summit, Missouri. We went 100% ESOP in 2017, and we're looking at about 300 employees now across all divisions, if you will. A lot of that recently here as we've acquired those grocery stores. And I'll share one fun little fact with you. We were awarded by the ESOP Association in 2024 their ACE Award for top video communication. And so we're pretty proud of our employee owners. I know there's a lot of them online today. And by the way, I forgot, happy ESOP Awareness Month, right? And with that said, I'm going to introduce. We've got two great people with us today. They are experts. We've got Peter Newman. He's the founder of Peak Wealth Planning. He's joining us today. And Tiffany Bennett. She's the corporate HR manager with Plastic Products Company. And so with that, I'll turn it over to you guys. Welcome.
Thank you, Michael. That all those different food brands made me hungry. So I think after this, I might have to get some tacos. I'm Peter Newman. I'm the president and founder of Peak Wealth Planning. I've spent 2.5 decades managing investments, and half that time has been with Peak Wealth Planning, where we specialize in finding what brings ESOP participants joy in their next stage after working in retirement. And we help align their finances with an income stream in retirement and help them figure out when they can actually retire, how much they can actually spend, and when and whether they should diversify their concentrated company stock. And we enjoy working with ESOP participants across the country. And I will now turn it over to Tiffany.
Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Tiffany Bennett with Plastic Products Company. I've been here, it'll be 12 years pretty soon, so time flies when you're having fun with an ESOP company. Very active in the ESOP community, current chapter president for the Minnesota Dakotas chapter. So you could say I drank the ESOP Kool-Aid right away when I started and I haven't looked back. So I enjoy working with our 11 locations across our fleet of PPC to help educate and bring awareness to why it's awesome to have this gift of ownership. So on the next slide, I'm just going to give you a little bit of background about us as a company because it does kind of impact some of the story that we're going to be sharing today. So we are a custom plastics and metal injection molding company. We were founded in 1962. As I mentioned, we have 11 locations right now across the US. So we're in 7 states. So that can have some complications, but it's also part of interesting about us. We have 1,000+ employee owners. So it says here that we've been 100% ESOP since 2013, but we actually started our journey as a 30% ESOP in the late 80s. So you'll see that come into play in some of our stories that we tell later. Also, we do not provide a match on the 401k, but we like to educate our employees that they can fill 2 buckets towards their retirement. The one that they have some impact on, which is their 401k, and also the ESOP that the company gives to them for coming to work every day. So the next slide shows just a brief overview of our stock performance history since right before we became 100% up till this past year. So, it kind of took off, and then, we had a little bit of a setback, which I'll mention later, after the COVID and some struggles that happened with all of us for 2020. But we like to share that history because it does matter to our employee owners to know these things. On the next slide, you can just see percent of salary. So when we have new hires coming in, they always say, well, what does that mean? What do I get? They're looking for some figures that they can work with. And so historically, we've been able to give 10 to 15% of their yearly salary as a contribution back into their ESOP. So that has been a wonderful thing for us. Next slide. Some plan specifics. So our vesting period is over 6 years. Again, I mentioned that 10 to 15% of their salary. Our specific plan milestones for diversification, which is a big topic that we're going to share with you today, starts at the age of 55 and then again at 60. Retirement age for everybody, is pretty much 62. And then we do have a payout over 5 to 6 years, depending on the balance of their account. And so there's different ways that they can get that distribution of their ESOP, and we will go into that further.
Tiffany and Michael, that was a fabulous introduction. One disclaimer we just need to make as a team: we're not giving individual tax, legal, financial, or even relationship advice. You should seek professional guidance from your own financial advisor, attorney, or CPA. As many of you are aware, and we'll elaborate on how that works, the ESOP is a great retirement income and wealth building tool. And we are going to do a deep dive into Plastic Products Company. But keep in mind that every employee stock ownership plan has slightly different rules, may have different payout schedules. So it's really important to consult your plan document and consider your unique circumstances.
So some of the things we want you to have as a takeaway from today's session is that hopefully you will come away with an understanding of what is important to you. And part of that is understanding some of the benefits and risks of working for an ESOP company. How do you access the cash that is yours, whether you retire or leave that company? What is the process of diversification and how is that distributed to you? How much retirement income can you generate while you're actively working as an employee owner? And steps that you can take for retirement success personally. So I mentioned some benefits of an ESOP. Number one, there's no cost. Employees come to work, they get a paycheck, but they're also earning shares in our company. So that is, the simplest way to put it when we're recruiting. It allows them to build a nest egg, and we all benefit. If the company does well, we all do our job and we move forward and take care of our customers, then we're taking care of our fellow employee owners as well and our retirees. That does come into play. And it helps reduce turnover. And I'd also like to say that it helps recruit new employees too. The benefits of an ESOP is on both ends of that employment spectrum.
And I'm going to talk about retirement benefits here, but I wanted to mention during our presentation, if you have questions, you can drop them in the chat window or the Q&A window, and we'll pause at a certain point and try to address those. So I just wanted to make sure the audience knows that they can certainly drop questions in there so folks can address those. In terms of retirement benefits, your company grants you shares each year in the employee stock ownership plan, and your stock account grows. And that's tax deferred till retirement. When you get a regular paycheck at work, you pay taxes as you go each year. However, with an ESOP, the wealth that builds up and the compounded returns, you don't pay any tax until you actually take the money out at retirement. At retirement, you can transfer your ESOP balance, sell shares back, and move that to an individual retirement account, an IRA, or a 401k account. And why would you do that? Once the money is in the IRA or the 401k, you can create a program of steady withdrawals to basically replace your paycheck and have money for your lifestyle down the road. And employee stock ownership plans, I've seen hundreds of them. Most of them are really, really well ran. However, there are exogenous events that we can't control for. For example, the mortgage crisis in 2008, 2009, the COVID scare, and sometimes different industries have challenges at different times. So there can be, just like a public company stock, the value of the stock could go up and down. There can be changes in stock value with an employee-owned plan. Tiffany, do you want to talk a little bit about what you've seen in that arena?
Yeah, so as I mentioned earlier, we did have a reduction in our share price following COVID and some of the issues with getting the economy back going and struggles to get materials. But the thing that we did well with that is we communicated. We could tell ahead of time, things were going to be happening, and we communicated with our active employee owners. So there is a risk of that value reduction, but then remembering that it's a long game, right? A lot of us are in this ESOP for retirement. It's wealth building. So not to panic and stay the course, right? So we did communicate about that. But one thing that did happen is our retirees that weren't active employees weren't necessarily getting that message at home in our emails and our communications. So, that is a risk. They started calling us when they got their share statements like, what happened? What is wrong with this price? And so we had to communicate again with them, what the state of the business was and how we were going to move forward. Another risk is the combined wealth and income and putting all their eggs in one basket. So if they're only relying on their ESOP for retirement and not contributing or doing any investments on their own or taking advantage of some of the options later in their ESOP career, that can be a risk as well. And then bankruptcy, layoff, also a company being bought out by another company. These are some things to really consider, that it is a long game, and have some alternatives in your back pocket.
Yes, and we've seen situations where, for example, Silicon Valley Bank had a lot of troubles a couple of years back, and unfortunately, folks that were in that stock plan lost their assets. But we've seen other windfall situations where employee-owned companies have been purchased by another acquirer, and folks got a windfall payout for their shares, and many of those individuals reinvested that money for wealth and retirement down the road rather than spending it right away, because a lot of those people were in their 40s. That being said, employee stock ownership plans were not meant to be your only wealth building account. Many companies offer a 401k plan that you can put money aside in where you can save on your own. Maybe the company matches, maybe they don't. You can open your own individual retirement account. Perhaps your spouse or partner or someone else in your household has their own investments. Maybe they're a firefighter or a school teacher or a police officer, and they might be paying into a pension. Many of us, or the majority of people, are paying into Social Security. And then you may fix up duplexes on the weekend and have a little real estate business. So you might have another potential wealth building tool. Many companies have high deductible health plans today, and they offer health savings accounts, which you can actually sock money away in a health savings account for medical expenses down the road. Oftentimes in retirement, you can spend an HSA before retirement, but sometimes it's better to let those assets build up and invest and compound because healthcare costs tend to go up as we age. So the point of this is that the employee stock ownership plan can be one piece of, if you think of a pie, it can be one slice of a pie of different activities you're doing to move your financial plan forward for your household. The other piece is diversification and selling stock back and diversifying, and we'll dive into what that means in greater detail later in the presentation.
Well, Peter, Tiffany, thank you guys. That was a great way to get things rolling. Looks like we've got a poll question here, and the poll question is: how close are you to retirement? Are you within 5 years, 6 to 10, 20 years? Maybe some of you are more than 20 years, or some of you might be on here and you're already retired and you're interested to learn more. We'll take a few minutes and we'll go ahead and see what we've got across the board.
While we're waiting for poll questions, someone was putting up Halloween decorations around our building today. So now I'm trying to get in the mode of Halloween and got to think about what costume I'm going to wear.
Any ideas, Peter?
I'm thinking a pirate might be not too complex, and I've done it in the past. It's kind of a fun costume. Also, you get to talk funny, so I think that'll be fun.
Well, I cop out every year and I just put on a cowboy hat and tell everyone I'm a cowboy, but it's really not that much different. It looks like I got somebody on here says they're going to go as Ozzy Osbourne.
There
I
you
think
go.
that's brilliant. I think that's brilliant.
That's a great tribute for sure. I love that. Good job, Lauren.
All right, looks like the polls are in. I think they're closed. It looks like we've got about 40% that are going to retire. That's a high number. 40% going to retire within 5 years. We've got 20% of the audience within the 6 to 10 marker. A little smaller number here, 11 to 20, which is the category I'm in. That's 12%. And we've got 28% that are looking at 21 or more years to retirement. Peter, Tiffany, what do you have to say about that?
I think it's exciting to see the range of folks, particularly the folks within 5 years. This is going to be very timely for you in terms of thinking about next steps. But I'm also excited to see a lot of folks who have a long time horizon, because that means they're probably going to take a lot of small steps along the way to make sure that they are financially knowledgeable and financially secure so that they don't have to stress about finances later in their life. Tiffany, anything to add to that?
I would agree that the sooner you can start learning, because if you know one ESOP, you know one ESOP. We hear that. So if you take time to dig into what your ESOP plan specifics are, it's just going to make you all the more prepared.
Excellent. So Tiffany, since we have some folks that are within 5-10 years of retirement, do you want to talk about the common milestones that you're aware of when folks can take their diversification?
This is specific to our plan again, so make sure you know yours. But what we typically see is they are offered a diversification option beginning at age 55, as long as they have 10 years of service in our plan. And then again, they have another opportunity at age 60. So it's important that they are paying attention to those timelines. Another time where people can take money is, of course, if they leave the company. So they choose to take a different job somewhere else. They maybe retire early, that normal age group that we have, or there's, we ask them to leave. The termination also comes into play sometimes, but it's still their money, right? They get to take it with them and they need to know their options on that. And then, of course, if somebody's working and then they pass away, so that their family and beneficiaries know what the options are. So, this will be my annual plug to make sure you update your beneficiaries in the fall. It's open enrollment, so it's also a good time to take a look at, are you prepared for what happens after? So again, knowing that plan is important.
And to add on to what Tiffany said, most ESOP plans, you can sell back up to 25% of the stock you've ever received at age 55. You can sell back up to another 25% to a cumulative 50% at age 60. You don't have to. And then whatever the specified retirement date is when those final distributions get paid out. Sometimes that's over 5 years. We've seen some ESOP companies, it's a lump sum. We've seen other companies where it might be 3 years. Sometimes it's dependent upon the value of your account when you retire. So again, it's important, as Tiffany said, to check your plan documents. Tiffany, there is an annual valuation process and that kicks off the options for people to get paid. Do you want to talk a little bit about how that works?
Sure. So we're coming up on that. So for plastic products, fiscal year ends the end of October. So 10/31 is a key date for us and our employees to remember. And so knowing your company's valuation process and fiscal year end is going to be an important thing for you to write down and find out if you don't already know. So at the close of our fiscal year, our records and everything, they get through an annual valuation process. Starting in January, February, we start to get excited and start to have contests here at PPC and guess what our share price is going to be, because we want to celebrate that. Once that share price has been announced to our active employees, we then give them a notice of their account. So they get their share statement given to them so they can see what their balance is and, what they're vesting, where they're at in their employment journey. And then we send it out to our terminated, retired, separated employees. And that's when this timeline really matters. They get an option from a third party that we utilize to help us with this whole process. So mailings go out. What is their options for distributions if they're going to take a diversification? And so they have to let us know within a certain amount of time on the letter that they get what they're going to do, if anything. That they don't make any choices, we don't do it for them, right? So you have to make sure that you're making your choices wisely. Once we hit that deadline and everybody's made their submissions on how they want to get their money distributed, then we go through the process of getting the funding ready for that. And depending on how they told us they want it, if they want it in a cash check form, if they want to roll it over into another investment option, that's when those things start happening. And we typically target that in the summer to fall, and then we do it all over again. So it is really an annual process. We educate about it a lot, but still, depending on where they're at in their life cycle as employee, they may not hear or retain some of those dates and the timeline. So it's an opportunity for us to communicate, how this all works, especially for new hires as well.
And to add on to what Tiffany said, and those are some excellent points, keep in mind that this time frame, there could be a delay of a few weeks to several months to up to a year on when the actual cycle is from the time you elect your distribution or decide you're going to retire to when you actually get a check or the money to roll to an IRA account. So it's really important, if you're getting near retirement, to have a conversation with your HR person or your plan administrator, or with the help of your financial advisor, to understand the timing and when you're going to actually receive funds so you don't get caught off guard. On a prior slide, we mentioned diversification options at age 55 and age 60. And in the ESOP world, diversification means you're going to sell back a single stock and get some cash, and you're probably going to take that money, if you don't spend it, and reinvest it. I spent a lot of time in the investment world, And we like to throw around these highfalutin words. And one of them that we say is diversification. And in the stock world, meaning ownership shares of companies, an ESOP is a single stock. There are thousands of companies you can invest in, about 14,000 globally. I want to give an example about diversification for non-finance people. We enjoy vegetable gardening in our household. Several years ago, we visited a farm that had all different kinds of squash, like 100 different varieties of squash. And we got a bunch of squash and we took it home and we made different dishes with it. And we saved the seeds. And the following spring, we planted those squash seeds in the garden. Well, we had a bumper crop, like crazy numbers of butternut squash at the end of that summer, about 75. Some of them were gigantic, as big as baseball bats, without exaggeration. We actually used them around the house for Halloween decorations. Well, the next spring we thought, hey, that was wonderful. We really like that squash. We're going to plant more squash the following year. So we did. We planted squash. And lo and behold, we literally got like 2 or 3 squash. Some fungus came and like wiped out the squash plants. However, per my photograph, we had also planted beets, zucchini, garlic, carrots, peppers, and tomatoes. So we still had a bountiful harvest from the garden, enough to eat, but that's because we had planted probably a dozen or 2 dozen different kinds of vegetables. Well, diversification in the investment world works the same way. A single stock, you can have a bumper crop and do really well, but if that stock doesn't do well, you want to be invested in lots of different stocks so you can still eat and have a bountiful harvest for your life. Now, diversification options. Tiffany, you mentioned them before, but you want to go over those again and we can talk a little bit about the pros and cons of the 3 different diversification options at PPC.
Yeah, so if they are an active employee and still working, they can choose to leave their money with the company and not diversify, right? So they can just let that all continue to work for them in their ESOP account balance. They can transfer it, like I said, into another retirement vehicle, a 401k, an IRA, something that they can use for something else, a little bit more easily accessible. And then they can also choose to cash the check and use that money to do something else in their life. But again, that's if they're no longer working for the company, they cannot remain in company stock. They're going to need to make one of these options.
Excellent. And so if you stay in company stock and the company is doing really well financially, you could have the potentially for higher growth and additional growth. Let's say you're age 60 and you're trying to decide if I should diversify. However, if you're in a cyclical industry, maybe it's the construction industry and it's kind of boom bust, well, you might be at risk if the company falls on hard times and you're getting close to retirement. If you move the money to an IRA or 401k, you can diversify your investments per my gardening example, but you would be continuing to still grow your funds for retirement. If you take your diversification and you cash the check, keep in mind when you actually cash the check from a diversification, or even if you pulled money from an IRA later, you're going to owe some tax on that payment. If you cash that check that came out of an ESOP and you're beyond age 59 and a half, you'll pay regular income tax. But if you are before age 59 and a half, you will also pay an additional 10% tax penalty. So it's important to just be aware of the tax ramifications of if you do spend your diversification funds. I am sometimes asked as a financial advisor, should I diversify my company stock? And there's a variety of reasons to diversify, and there are a variety of reasons to remain in company stock. One of them has to do with timing. Are you going to need some cash to maybe bridge the gap to Social Security, or you might retire early? So that might be a reason to go ahead and diversify. Or you might stay in company stock if you have other sources of retirement income. I mentioned before the pie. If you have a lot of money in a 401k and your spouse or partner has a lot of funds, you may say, hey, my company's doing well. I want to continue to build wealth with this company. I'm okay with some concentration. Concentration can really build more wealth, even though it also does have some risk. So again, every case is unique and dependent, and you should have a conversation with your trusted advisor about this. But I just wanted to point out there's a lot of reasons to diversify, and there's also a lot of good reasons, depending on your time frame and your unique circumstances, to stay in company stock.
Thanks, Peter. I think that's some food for thought there, and it actually brings some perspective into the next poll question we've got here. And the question, everybody, is what proportion of your nest egg is in ESOP shares right now? Is it none, up to 25%? Is it 26 to 50? Is it 51 to 75, or is it even more than that? So take a few minutes and answer that question. And while we wait, I'll remind you, we're going to have a little bit of time at the end. If you've got some questions and things that come to mind, you can put that in the Q&A section, and we'll take some time to address those at the end. Peter, you had me intrigued by your gardening story, and I noticed in your slide that you had a sweet potato. I like to cook, and sounds like you do too. So the other day, my wife bought sweet potatoes, which I don't like, by the way, but she wanted to make sweet potato soup. So I discovered this recipe and we made a creamy sweet potato soup. It was out of this world, no joke, and unbelievable. If you're interested, I'll send you the recipe, but man, it was fabulous.
I'm always looking for good recipes, so do send me the recipe. I love it.
All right. Coming your way. It's coming your way. All right. We've got the poll questions in. We've got 14% that say none. We've got 41% of the audience up to 25%. 18% is in that 26 to 50% range. 14% of the audience, 51 to 75, and 14% over 75% invested. Peter, Tiffany, what's that tell us as we talk a little bit more about diversification?
I would make a guess that perhaps our folks at 55 to 65 in age might have a higher percentage of their ESOP in their nest egg, and possibly some people just starting out. And if I'm guessing you've got a higher percentage in your nest egg and you're older, maybe your company stock has done really well and it's zoomed up a lot and it's outstripped your other savings. Like it's grown faster than your 401k and those accounts. On the flip side, we might see someone with a high proportion of their nest egg in ESOP because maybe it's their only savings vehicle and they haven't yet put money in some of those other savings vehicles. So it's hard to know without seeing a specific case, but that would be one of my guesses. The up to 25%, that could also be someone closer to retirement. So this is interesting data to look at, but it really turns into useful information when you get down at the individual level. Tiffany, what are your thoughts?
Agree too. It's really hard to know everybody's personal situation, but it does tell me that people maybe have some opportunities to make some adjustments based on what they're learning and picking up from, some of these examples today.
Wonderful.
All right. Here's the question. What would you do with a $250,000 windfall? How would you spend it? What if it were only 25,000?
And while folks are answering that, we do have a question from Shelley Wells. It says, how do you communicate the benefits of an ESOP for recruitment purposes to young people? Tiffany, I know you and I have presented on that in the past. Do you want to take a shot at answering that, and I'll chime in?
So I think we're changing the language around it. People don't want to think about it as retirement. So we are trying to use terminology in the ESOP community as wealth building. So knowing that they're coming on with us, they're going to build some wealth while they're here. Maybe they don't know that they're going to retire from us, but they know that they're going to have this still as their money in their shares. So we try to give them that. Also, I think testimonials, from people that have retired and what they can stand to gain, I think has been an important thing for us to share. And we also reduced our age to join our ESOP a few years ago down to the age of 18. We figured, why make them wait till they're 21? If we hire 18-year-olds to start, why not let them start reaping those benefits and earning those shares? And maybe they will stay longer because they're realizing that they are a valued employee owner. We're seeing some comments come in here and the difference. I think these are fun. I see a lot of invest in income, pay off mortgages, Chiefs tickets. I'm not sure about that one. I'm not even a Vikings fan, but I think that's a fun one. I like this. Maybe people are thinking about doing some investing in other things, medical costs. Does it change though when it's 25,000? I think instead of 250,000, that's an interesting question. So maybe then there would be more of the Chiefs tickets or taking that epic vacation. I know I'd like to go to Europe again.
Yeah, I saw in one of the $250,000, I think several of the $250,000 ones, I see some mindsets of retirement income account, down payment and invest. The 25,000 ones, interestingly, uh, medical needs possible, invest and save. So there are some consistent themes as well as the fun aspects of the Chiefs tickets. And I do see one person that sort of stratified it, pay off high interest debt, invest in a target date retirement plan. So that person clearly has read up on some different how to prioritize when you have a sum of money to work with. I love the variety of answers. So we've mentioned before nest eggs, and we've talked a little bit about how close folks might be to retirement. But I thought it would be useful to show you the pie that I mentioned before and two different examples of the pie of what you could actually potentially see as a nest egg from a employee stock ownership plan participant. This could be an individual's nest egg. It could be a household nest egg. So on the left, I have a $500,000 nest egg. And there is a rule of thumb in the investment world that says a $500,000 nest egg could generate around 4% a year of retirement income or $20,000 a year. That could be a little bit higher, but this is just an example to show you. But the point I wanted to drive at here is on the left, the pie chart is showing a big blue area, $300,000 in the 401k. So that means that roughly 12,000 of that 20,000 or about 12,000 of that 20,000 is coming from that 401k. But we have 100,000 in this person's ESOP and $100,000 that this person or their family saved in their individual retirement account. So 4,000 would be coming from each of those accounts. So 4,000 from the ESOP, 4,000 from the IRA, and 12,000 from the 401k. And the point in putting this up is to show you the proportion of where your income might be derived from. The one on the right, this person's ESOP, they've been in it for decades, 32 years. The company's done really well. Early on in their career, they were getting 25% of their salary in the ESOP. The company changed it later in the year to later years down the road to 10% of their salary in the ESOP to make more conservative contributions. But their ESOP hit the ball out of the park, and they've got a $4 million nest egg, 400,000 in IRA, 300,000 in 401k. So a much more significant potential payout, $160,000 a year from a $4 million nest egg, with over 120,000 a year coming from the ESOP. Now you would actually move that money to an IRA or 401k before you drew out the 120,000 from the ESOP, but I'm trying to show you the sources of funds that could generate money for you in retirement. Keep in mind, this doesn't include Social Security or an annuity that you might have elsewhere or a pension that your spouse might have, but I wanted to show you these proportions as examples so you could wrap your head around how much nest egg you need to generate a certain amount of income at retirement. And Tiffany, I know you and I have spoken in the past. Do you want to talk about what does a mid-career plastic products company employee might look like?
Yeah, so here we have an example. We're going to call him Sam today. He is currently age 54, making 66,000 a year. What I think is really neat here, though, is to look at his ESOP balance, 436,000, and he's been getting about 7,000. If we look at that 10 to 15% of his salary contributed into that. He's also been contributing to his own 401k. And ESOP since the beginning here is important. So we went minority ESOP in the 80s. So we have several longtime employees that have been part of the ESOP for 30 plus years or more. So Sam here has a retirement goal of working a few more years till the age of 62. He wants to earn 4,000 a month for his income to have when he retires, and he plans to pay off his mortgage.
Yeah, Sam's conservative and definitely wants to have his mortgage paid off. So if Sam came to me as a financial advisor, then we might do a quick income replacement calculator. This is a spreadsheet. You can use a program for it, but to give you an idea, we would plug in Sam's balances, how much he's contributing, how much the company is contributing, how much those accounts might grow, and importantly, how many years he has towards retirement. And we would generate some output from those calculations. In this case with Sam, his ESOP is a large portion of his wealth. So he'd have around $2,300 a month from the ESOP funds, a few $100s a month from his 401k. And because he's taking Social Security earlier at 62 in our forecast, he'd have around $3,800 a month from after-tax monthly income, with $1,150 coming from Social Security. So you can see the proportions of where the income is coming from for Sam. And this is an after-tax forecast. We actually estimated Sam's taxes as well. And Tiffany, what do you think Sam would think about that?
I think Sam's gonna want to know what could he do maybe in those few years left that he wants to work to improve his situation. I would say one thing, if you ask me, would be maybe apply for another job that, you could take a promotion. He has a lot of time in our company and he could, earn more income that way. But what would you tell him, Peter?
Sure, he could definitely increase his income, and then by virtue of doing that, his contributions would go up. He could also potentially increase his 401k contribution, either from additional salary from a promotion or maybe from his current budget. Sam's other option, if he literally didn't change anything, but just decided to wait another 5 years, that would add about a $1,500 a month cushion because his Social Security would go up and his 401k and IRA accounts would have time to continue to compound and grow. And also, we haven't talked about whether Sam is married, so maybe his spouse has a situation where her income might impact this. Tiffany, I know that you've known Sam for a while. What do you see as key success behaviors for folks that want to have a robust retirement?
Definitely making those regular contributions to your 401k. He's doing 3%, so encouraging people to look at increasing that and staying with that and not pulling it out of their 401k either. This character here, Sam, he left his money in the 401k and the ESOP. He did not diversify yet. I mean, he still would have that option. And he's very frugal and he's only used his savings for emergencies. So he does have that to fall back on.
Yeah, to follow up on that, one of the most important accounts anyone can have is an emergency savings account. Even if you only put $50 a paycheck in there, building that up is crucial so that when life events happens, whether it's the dishwasher broke or the kids broke their arm and you have to pay the copay at the hospital, it's wonderful to have that emergency savings account so you're not pulling from retirement accounts and shortchanging your compounding investment returns that really build wealth across time. Tiffany, I know that PPC has a recent retiree. He was actually able to retire somewhat early. Do you want to talk about James and James's story?
Yeah, so James again was one of those employees that was with us from the beginning. Long-term employee. He had been also putting a lot of money into his 401k, regular contributions. He had a spouse that was a little bit older than him, and so he had made a decision with their family that he wanted to spend more time in retirement to have that valuable years. And so he did choose to diversify the two opportunities that he had, and then he used that money to prepare for what was going to come next when he did retire at that early age. And so since then, what they did was they used that money to buy an investment property down south, somewhere a little bit warmer than Minnesota. And then as he finished up his working years, they sold their Minnesota house and then relocated. And so then one of his benefits was then he didn't have a mortgage payment. So that freed up some monthly income where they could retire, travel, and enjoy that time.
Great. And I know that we talked about James and we were speculating what his retirement income potential might be. And keep in mind, he has paid off his mortgage, but he would have roughly $900 a month from his employee stock ownership plan, about $1,300 a month from his 401k. And we did some estimating based on his salary, but maybe around $1,500 a month from his Social Security. So around $3,800 a month monthly income. And then we don't know what his spouse has, but James's spouse probably has some retirement income as well. That was an excellent example of a mid-career PPC employee as well as someone who just retired. Tiffany, what next steps should folks think about taking?
So really tracking their ESOP, watching those statements, paying attention to communications from your management staff on what you can do as an employee owner too, right? We all do have an impact on what that, the future of our companies are, and your retirement account balances through your 401k and your other accounts and investments that you have. Knowing where you're at, knowing your timeline for your company. I think we've said this a whole bunch of times. This is important. What is that diversification timeline? If you wanted to take that money to be able to build a house next summer, you need to make sure that you retire or term your employment on time. So if, for in our example, we've had some people that retire in November, they're going to have to wait almost 2 years to get that. So understanding what do you want next? Diversify when you're eligible. If that's something you want to do, that money is a lot easier to access when you've moved it into a separate account that's not tied to the company on our timeline. Understanding those options and then forecasting your retirement. What is your goal? What do you want out of retirement? Do you want to have that summer home? Do you want to travel? Do you want to be able to help your kids or with college expenses? So I think, suggestions is really take some time and understand what do you want, where are you at now, and what can you do to get to there if you're not quite where you want to be.
All excellent points. If any of our attendees have questions, drop them in the chat. We'll try to address them before we take off here. I just want to add on to what Tiffany said. If you think you're going to diversify and you don't have an individual retirement account, an IRA open, you might want to go ahead and open one before you get the election paperwork from your company, because having that account container set up, you can give your company or your HR person or your plan administrator the instructions for that IRA account, and you're not scrambling to open an account at last minute. Another thing that you can do is, as we mentioned this all along, we will be sending out something after this. You don't have to write anything down, but if you've attended it, we have your email where you can have an opportunity to subscribe to a newsletter where we put out information about general financial planning topics, as well as items unique to ESOP participants. And you'll be having an opportunity to do a quick retirement income forecast like we showed for Sam. If you're interested in that, it's a no obligation thing that we provide. And if you're interested in learning more about what Peak Wealth Planning does, you can schedule a discovery call with one of our team members.
Peter, Tiffany, thank you guys so much. This was really great, really insightful. I think we have a couple more minutes. If anyone had any questions, we're certainly going to stay on here a couple more minutes to answer those. Man, thank you guys so much. It's been a great having you on. And I know everyone out there really, really appreciates this information. Any other last thoughts? I don't see any questions popping in at this time.
I guess one of my last thoughts is really, we didn't talk about it here, but for folks that are maybe 10, 15 years from retirement, because I work with a number of people through the transition to retirement, for some folks, it's pretty easy for them to retire and figure out that next chapter, that next step. However, if you haven't really thought about how to test drive retirement or think about what you want to do in retirement, it's important to reflect a little bit, and this is not the financial side, but more the how you love to spend your time, who you love to spend time with, what activities you like to do. It's important to think about and maybe test drive some different activities on the weekend or on extended trips or vacations. I know we're all working hard, but work-life balance, so that you don't get to retirement and travel for 3 months and have full stop. Because I've seen some people that are a little bit lost, and I feel like having some thinking about purpose is really important, as well as all the financial aspects of it.
I would say one takeaway too is, it's a long game. That payout can take 1 to 6 years. So, who's going to be your replacement as you're looking at succession planning too? Are they going to help run that company in the same way that we've been working towards it and value it the same? Because if your stock is still in there, you want the company to be performing well so that you still get that max out of the rest of your funds that are in the ESOP.
Lauren asked a really good question. What's the biggest mistake at retirement or pitfall to watch for? One of those things I did mention is like how you're going to spend your time. The other piece is I will often see folks, especially if this is more of the people that really get into the weeds on the investment piece, they might have too much stock or equity account risk. And the way you build a lot of wealth in life is through investing in equities and having compounded returns. But sometimes it's good to be a little bit more conservative with your investments, not hyper conservative, but a little bit more conservative when you get closer to retirement. So you don't have the oh crap moment and things go down like a 2008, 2009 event or the COVID massive downfall we had that then came way back up after government support. So I think that roller coaster and not having your stomach, a pit in your stomach right before retirement is something to maybe think about as well.
Awesome. Well, Peter, thanks for answering that. Oh, we've got another one. Hold on, I got one more question from Grant, and he says, just to clarify, can we diversify 25% each year between age 55 to 60, or is it a one time only between 55 and 60? I think that's a great question.
So I'll answer from my general knowledge, and if Tiffany wants to tack on for PPC. So Grant, that's a fantastic question. You're giving the option to diversify at age 55 for all the shares you've ever accumulated, but you're not required. So you'll have the option again with your plan administrator. Say you don't diversify at age 55, you might say, well, I'm not going to do it at 55. I'm not going to do it at 56. I'm going to diversify up to 25% of the shares I've ever received at age 57 or 58. Now, keep in mind, you get new shares each year. And I think, even though I've never seen anyone do this, but even though you get some new shares each year between age 55 and 60, in theory, you could diversify all the shares you ever received at age 55. And then the ones you receive, say, between 56 and 59, you can diversify another up to 25% of those shares at 59. But most folks will do a diversification at 55 and then one at 60. But if you don't diversify at 60, that 50%, you could wait and diversify half the shares you've ever received, say at age 62, and still not retire until age 65 or maybe even later if your company lets you stay longer. But excellent question. And remember, it's an option to diversify, not a requirement.
And again, check your plan documents because it's going to depend. So I believe in our plan, they have this starting at age 55, but then they have each year after that up till 60 where they can take that 25% because maybe they won't hit their 10 years until they're, been there till 57 because they were not employed with us for 30 to 40 years. So again, really understand your plan documents, talk to your HR or your ESOP administrators, and they will help you figure that out for you.
Yeah, and Tiffany added on a really excellent point, which is just because you've hit age 55 doesn't mean you can diversify. The majority of plans, you also have to have been with that company in that plan for at least 10 years. Excellent question.
No, so I got one more here from Grant, and he's asking, can you still diversify after you've already retired?
That's the interaction between diversification and distribution, Grant. Usually what I'll see folks do is they'll just go into distribution mode. So whatever your company's distribution policy is, if they've never diversified, let's say the company's distribution policy is you can take 1/5 a year over 5 years. However, this is a very technical piece and we'd want to check with the company. I think technically you might be able to actually diversify at that point 50% all at once and then receive your distributions over time. But there might be an interaction effect between those two and how they administer that could vary by company. Excellent question. And Cheryl listed in the chat what PPC's plan is. Tiffany, do you want to read what she has on there?
It says, once you become a qualified participant, you may elect to diversify up to 25% of your vested account balance during, our 90-day, so that that period in the spring where they get to make their elections. During a 6th election period, you may diversify up to 50% of your vested account. So diversification during the entire 6-year period is cumulative, and each year's maximum election is reduced by amounts previously diversified. So I think you had mentioned that, Peter, like if you take it out, you have less in there. So definitely take a look at that.
Excellent. And our emails are on the screen, and I know Carmen's going to send around a follow-up email to everyone, and we'll make sure we include all of our presenters' contact information in case folks want to follow up with us individually for questions as well.
Awesome. Well, hey, Peter, Tiffany, thank you guys so much for hosting this with us today. Thank you, everybody online, for joining us. We're at our time, and so hope you have a great day. I hope this was helpful to you all, and enjoy the rest of October.
Thank you.
Thank you.